Okay, lesson 8, the quadratic formula. Now, one nice thing about the quadratic formula is that it works with any quadratic equation or any equation that we have. It will help us find our two roots or the two solutions where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, and our formula is right here. Okay, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and then there's a little hymn that I'll show you later, and some of you may already know the hymn, okay, to help you remember that. And it always, you have to make sure that when you're finding A, B, and C, that it's in standard form before you write down what A, B, and C equal. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here. This first page here just shows you how to derive the formula of the quadratic formula, and it's not imperative for us to know, but it is here for you to see where they get the equation and how they come up with it. Okay, so using the quadratic formula. Before we can use the quadratic formula here, remember we need to get it in standard form. Okay, so for this one we're going to write in standard form first. That means everything needs to be on the left side and it has to be set equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 21 on both sides. So now we have x squared minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. Okay, then what I usually like to do is write down what A, B, and C all equal. Okay, so I'll write down, oh, my board just quit on me here, I think. Just a second here. Okay, there we go. I like to write down what A, B, and C all equal. So what does A equal? A is the number in front of x squared. If we look at the general form, is ax squared plus bx plus c. That's standard form. Okay, so A is the number in front of x squared, and the number in front of x squared, there is none there, but we do have an x squared, so we can't say 0. We have 1 x squared, so A is 1. B, number in front of x, is negative 4. The coefficient in front of x is negative 4. And then the constant all alone, c, is negative 21. Okay? And then we can use our formula, okay? And it's also up here, our quadratic formula. So we have negative b. So whenever I substitute, I put in parentheses. So I have negative 4 plus or minus square root b squared of b squared, so negative 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 21, and then divide that whole thing by 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, now we can do a bunch of simplifying here. Lots of simplifying. Start here, double negative in front of the 4 is just positive 4, so we have 4. We have plus or minus a square root. Negative 4 squared is 16. 16 minus negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 21 is going to give us actually positive here. Positive 84 divided by 2 times 1, which is just 2. Okay. Then I can simplify underneath the square root. 16 plus 84. So we get 4 plus or minus the square root of 100. 16 plus 84 is 100. Divided by 2. I can simplify further the square root of 100. So we have 4 plus or minus 10. Okay, because square root of 100 is 10, divided by 2. Now, to find our two solutions, the next part is where we can get our two solutions from. In order to get our two solutions, I have to set up two different expressions. I have 4 plus the 10 divided by 2, so that's the plus part, and then I have to set up an expression with the minus. So I have 4 minus 10 divided by 2. So here 4 plus 10 is 14, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I can say I have x equals 7, or x equals 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So our two solutions where our quadratic would hit the x-axis would be at positive 7 and negative 3. Okay? So that's how to use the quadratic formula. I know a lot of you like to use just a formula instead of factoring or completing the square or using square roots. Okay? This is just another way of solving quadratic equations and finding the solutions. Okay? Here's another one, a word problem. Number's not so nice, so you may need a calculator for this one to follow along. So I'm going to grab my calculator here. So we have negative 0.005 x squared plus 0.7 x squared, or just x, plus 3.5. Okay? They want to know how far from the batter the ball will land, and it says here that x is the horizontal distance. So horizontal distance is how far the ball will land. So then we're going to round to the nearest tenth of a foot. Okay, so to find x, okay, we can use our quadratic formula because this would not be easy to factor. It would not be easy to use completing the square. So using our quadratic formula, then we can just substitute the numbers in our equation and find our answer. So a is going to be negative 0.005. Always like to write down what a, b, and c are, just so I have it there and I can find it easy. And b is going to be 0.7. And C is 3.5. Okay, so our quadratic formula is negative b. So negative 0.7 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so we have 0.7 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 0.005, times c, which is 3.5, divided by 2 times a, so 2 times negative 0.005. Okay, and then I can simplify everything here. So we have negative 0.7 plus or minus square root. 0.7 squared is going to be 0.49 minus, now here we might need to use a calculator, negative 4 times negative 0.005. So that a negative times negative is going to be positive, so I can say plus 4 times 0.05. So we get this gives us 0.2, and then 0.2 times 3.5 is 0.07, or 0.02, sorry, this is 0.02. And then times 3.5, I get 0.07. So we have 0.49 plus 0.07 divided by, and then 2 times, so we're going to have negative on the bottom. 2 times negative 0.005 is going to be 0.01. Okay? Then I can add 0.49 and 0.07 together to get 0.56. So I have negative 0.7 plus or minus the square root of 0.56. If I add those two together, okay, divided by negative 0.01. So now to find my two answers, now because everything is simplified, I write one expression with the positive and one expression with the negative. So now I have negative 0.7 plus, and then square root of 0.56. I'm going to find what that is. Second square root of 0.56. And if we round to the nearest tenth, okay, it's going to be 0.7. Okay, over or divided by negative 0.01. Well, this is going to be easy because negative 0.7 plus 0.7 is going to be 0, and 0 divided by negative 0.01 is 0. Anything divided by 0 is 0. So that one we get 0, or we get negative 0.7 minus 0.7 and divided by negative 0.01. So we get negative 1.4 divided by negative 0.01, and that is going to give us a positive because the negative divided by negative is positive, and it gives us 140. Okay, now we have to look, we have it's labeled in feet, so we say 140 feet. Now, which of the two makes sense for the problem? Well, of the two, okay, we're not going to have a distance of 0 when they say the batter actually hits the baseball. Okay, it's not going to go 0. So that doesn't make sense for our answer. So we're going to say 140 feet is the one that's going to make sense. So when you're finding them for word problems, you have to think about, okay, which of my two answers makes sense? Because I get to choose. I have an or here. So one of the two is going to make better sense. The 140 feet is going to make a little bit better sense. Okay? So that's using the quadratic formula. You're going to want to use a calculator. Calculator is going to help you just because there's a lot of small numbers and different things, calculations that you're going to have to do. Okay, so the next thing that we look at here is all the different methods that we've used throughout the unit. Okay, we use graphing. Okay, if there's graphing to find the solutions, it's where it hits the x-axis. Okay, now we're looking for the x-axis. Okay, when we use square roots, it's something if I have 4x squared equals, so this would be an example, 4x squared equals, let's say 64. Okay, you could solve that one using your square roots. Okay, if you can factor it using our 7 steps of factoring, you can use completing the square, and then our last one that we just learned was quadratic formula. Okay, and then I remember I told you there's a little trick or a hymn that will help you remember the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of 4, or b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And here is the little hymn that will help you remember that. Okay, so it's kind of elementary. It's the Pop Goes the Weasel song, but with the quadratic formula. And it does help you remember it because it puts it into a little hymn. So it's a little bit easier to remember. But we'll move on, if I can here. I don't know what happened, so give me a second here. Okay, anyway, the last page is just saying which method would work best. Okay, if you can solve by square roots because it has no x term or it's just got variables with x squared in it, you can use square roots. Okay, factoring, if there are factors of a times c that add together to give you the middle term of b, then you would want to factor. Okay, you can use completing the square if you can't factor it, and a is 1. And then you can use a quadratic formula for any one of them. So if none of these are easy to do, then I would just use a quadratic formula because I can use it for any quadratic equation and get the answer. Okay, so sorry that I don't know what happened here with my computer, but we can't go on to that next slide. So just practice looking at when would I use which method and whatnot, and we can look some of that at some of that at class 2 tomorrow. So make sure your notes are filled out, and we will discuss any questions that you have. Thanks. Oh, here, now it worked. So again, down here, okay, here we could factor this because factors of positive 12 when added together give us negative 8. Okay, you'd have negative 6 and negative 2. So if you were to factor this, then okay, you would have x. This isn't working. X minus 6 and x minus 2. Here we would use square roots because I could take the square root of both sides after I divide by 169. And then here, there's no factors of negative 5. Okay, because a times c is negative 5. There's no factors of negative 5 that add to give us 13. So here we could use our quadratic formula. Okay, so have a good night. Make sure you have your notes taken, and we will talk about it tomorrow.